Yo, how's it going on, guys? Welcome back to another. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome back to another Field of Dreams podcast episode, and this time we have.
IHP. I hear places.
Hell yeah! Thank you so much for coming on down this not evening, really. It's more like noon here, and I bet it's the same thing for you over there. Anyways. Yeah. So anyways, let's just get on with the actual question thing. So, on your form that you submitted a while back, one of the things you wanted to talk about was your own processes for creativity. Could you elaborate?
Yeah, no. So I'm I'm like a musician and artist, and the music and art that I make is very much influenced by my own spiritual beliefs, and it's like a meditative flow state I get into when I'm working on Ableton or working on Photoshop or something like that to create art, and it's always like a meditative trance state. Like I go into this state of like flow where I'm just able to make art without necessarily even thinking about it. It just turns out really good with no thought behind it, just like pure like instinct.
So,
And another aspect of it is, my influences.
is the spirituality thing a big influence in you, or is it just one of many?
It's one of many, but I think it is the biggest.
All right. What are some of the other ones?
I have, since I was young, I've had like a fascination with like the apocalypse and post-apocalyptic settings and like sci-fi stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I feel that's very relevant to the world, the state of the world today. It seems like perpetually apocalyptic. Like everything seems like it's falling apart. But I think it's now that we just have more social media and stuff, we're more aware of the world being chaotic.
Definitely. Which leads into another thing you wanted to talk about, climate doomerism and its relationship to new models of hope and spirituality.
Yeah, no, that's a big part of the themes behind my work, especially my newest EP, Demilitarized Zones, out on Freshwater Media. Shout out to them. And it's basically I made a bunch of like ambient chill out tracks with like old school sample packs I downloaded off archive.org. Kind of like Onion 6.Never with his latest album. Similar concept of like reusing old school like 90s cheesy like chill out ambient new age sample packs and repurposing them for something really cool.
Yeah.
And working with that, I was able to like simulate like what that would look like with like video game sounds and stuff like that to almost simulate a post climate apocalypse environment. And then for the track titles, I put the coordinates of various like company headquarters, the companies that have the worst environmental impact, like kind of like not doxing them, but kind of doxing them, as like part of the creative process of like if someone wants to go like Luigi because of my album, I can neither confirm nor deny that that's a good thing, but if
Yeah.
you know, you know.
Well,
So yeah, it's basically trying to raise awareness of environmental devastation. And another thing I think is interesting is that my music has a relationship to rave culture almost as a mourning of society before it got all fucked up.
yeah.
Because it's like rave culture is super like utopian, futuristic, peace, love, unity, respect. Just happy and high and having a good time. But there's also like this dark side of like in the rave scene, like heavy drug use and like commercialization and stuff like that. So I wanted to focus on the dark side of the rave scene with a lot of my music as well, and tie that in with apocalypticism. It's like almost like a mourning for a future that could have been.
Yeah. Do you think the focusing on the quote unquote future that could have been part that you said, do you think rave culture in general is better or worse for the society that we have right now?
I think it's generally better, but it's worse in a way that it loops around to becoming better by like being like almost like a distraction from like capitalism and shit like that. It becomes its own. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like if you ever read like the CCR plan stuff like that, it's what's called a hyperstition,
Yeah.
where it's almost like it's a belief that if you repeat, it's like manifestation of a belief into reality, essentially. And I believe rave culture, especially dubstep, because dubstep is what was my first love in terms of like music, and that in terms of that part of the mainstream of the American rave scene, as far as I'm concerned, it is almost like preparing people for the apocalypse, which is a big part of why I make my music. It's to prepare people for the upcoming climate collapse and societal degradation.
Yeah. And speaking of which, another thing you wanted to talk about was psychedelic culture, because with your ties into rave and the collapse of society per se, how does, psychedelic culture play into all this?
You know, so I used to do a lot of psychedelics before I ended up getting sober and moving to LA. I used to like eat acid like every day when I was in college, junior year of college, and I had this weird sort of like year long semi psychotic mindset where I was like a weird, just weird satanic shit invaded my life. But then I had like this trip at the end of it, which was like a DMT trip, where I saw like this basically God as like a spiral, as like the Fibonacci spiral, like the whole code behind the universe. And a lot of my work references spirals because that is what I believe God to be, is the spiral as an underlying pattern behind the universe. You see it everywhere in nature if you look hard enough.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think time also moves like a spiral. Like time moves both forwards, but people have premonitions of the future, and that's time moving backwards. And I think my craziest conspiracy theory is that dubstep was sent from back from the future to us by future humans.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it's like again, it's meant to like almost prepare people for the apocalypse using apocalyptic sounds. And I kind of came up with this idea or had this revelation that because of the way that time works, it's not too far fetched to say that dubstep was what was inspired by the future, because the origins of dubstep were the same people with the CCRU, the same collective in the UK that started like accelerationism, and that's what they're best known for, is accelerationism and inventing dubstep. Like one of the first dubstep producers, Code Nine, Steve Goodman, he CCRU, this British collective that created accelerationism, along with Nick Land, Sadie Plant, all these other like famous like accelerationist philosophers,
Yeah.
and they basically predicted the future we're living in now, along with a bunch of chaos magic and spiritual shit. And they were actually some of the first ones to kind of come up with the idea of the time spiral as well, even before separately and before me.
Oh, wow.
I think that's pretty cool.
Do you think society right now is progressing forwards or backwards?
Here's the thing. I think society peaked in around either 2000 or 2010, and it's been downhill ever since like 2012. Like the world didn't end in 2012, but that was like the peak of human civilization, and we're going backwards faster than we went up forwards.
Yeah. How so?
Just with, and I'm not going to get into political climate too much, although I'm transgender, and it's unavoidable for me to not hate the current political climate right now in
Yeah.
terms of certain things people are doing in the government, you know. But basically, the whole like end of Obama administration optimism and the economic collapse and COVID and inflation and all these different things, and now with like ICE and stuff, and there's society, at least in America, but also all over the world, especially with the stuff in Iran, it's all breaking down really fast.
If you were to give us like a time bomb per se, when do you think it would be set off?
What do you mean a time bomb?
Like in your definition of collapse, when do you think it would go like explode and implode humanity into your definition of an apocalypse?
I think it's coming soon, like around the 2030s. In between now and like 2050, that's bound to happen. But it's also not like an immediate apocalypse. It's not like everything blows up. It's more like things gradually collapse and are. It's like the fall of the Roman Empire, but the same with the American Empire. So and like the American influence on the whole world, and
Yeah.
that all collapses, and then China like takes over. But they're unable to like fully take over because the societies that they're colonizing are super fucking collapsed. So it's this weird dance between different imperial global geopolitical powers, and it ends up being a contest to see who can collapse the least with the environment and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm very invested in like all that stuff. I'm addicted to doom scrolling, so I'm always like constantly, perpetually anxious about the state of the world. I've always been since I was a kid. Since as I've had self awareness, I've always been like, this world is gonna end one day, you know. And it just
Yeah.
I'm pretty zen about it. It just like I just enjoy the world while I can in my cozy little place in LA. So
Yeah.
I'm
So
not doing too bad about that. So, but I'm just enjoying the creature comforts of the world before things get a lot worse while I can.
So I also want to ask this question. This will probably be the last question on this topic, considering how far the rabbit hole we've gone down. But
Yeah, no, figure out it all.
what if there was one of? Well, actually, how do I phrase this? Uh, what? Frick. What future event do you think that could possibly happen that would cause the world to just snap into dissension?
Probably either either like either like nuclear attacks, given the state of the war with Iran and stuff like that. More more likely, it's actually super intelligent AI that like collapses the economy. Not in like a Roko's basilisk kind of way, if you know, you know, but also in the way where human labor becomes useless and the
Yeah,
economy collapses. And I feel like that I had a kind of a premonition that that will happen in 2027. It's because it is the singularity, you know.
yeah,
It's like when the AI becomes conscious, human labor, human work, human life is going to be rendered useless, and the AIs will probably kick out the CEOs, and it won't be human CEOs anymore. They'll still get their money. They'll still be greedy billionaires, but they'll just have all the executive decisions run by a computer
yeah.
that can maximize shareholder value better than any human team can. So Like
Interesting.
no like job position will be safe, and there's already like mass unemployment in the U.S. because of AI taking a bunch of people's jobs.
Well, yeah,
Like, I'm going to school for like graphic design stuff right now, and it's been really it's been really scary to like watch all this unfold.
definitely. So that's a that yeah that yeah that's interesting. But at the same time, it's also really plausible considering everything that's been going on in the past couple of years with AI and how basically like the entire Discord community, Signal slush community that I've been in right now is just downplaying on AI, which in your context and description makes sense.
Yeah, what do you mean by that? Like downplaying AI?
I mean, all of I'm just gonna take Freshwater Media's Discord server as an example because sure there is the Slush Wave and Signal Wave servers, but Freshwater is the one that I'm mainly most talkative on per se. But like any context of AI or a compilation downplaying AI per se, not wanting it, hating on it, that's become a huge part in a lot of these compilations and a lot of these albums per se, and soon and some albums even dedicate themselves to not to going against AI, which in your context of it taking over the
I
world
think
per se makes a lot of
I think
sense.
that's, I think it's a good thing to resist like the AIification of society and try and preserve human creativity as much as we can. Because
Yeah.
AI is only going to learn from humans. At a certain point, it's going to stop learning, and that will also accelerate this sense of collapse when it can just repeats the same capitalist, axioms for its own behavior over time. That will eventually lead to like worse outcomes economically and socially as AI continues to take over. And it's going to be something where most people aren't even going to notice it.
Yeah.
Most people aren't going to notice that it's already happened. But when it happens, and I don't think it's happened yet, but I think it will soon.
Definitely.
And most people are not going to notice it. It'll just go by in the blink of an eye. Like, no one's going to notice that like suddenly the economy collapses in a few years and we're back into like the Great Recession in a global sense too. It's not just going to be the U.S. It's going to be like the financial collapse of 2008 all over again in like 2027, 2028. So like 20 years repeats the cycle. But hopefully we get like dubstep 2.0 out of it, because that's where dubstep originally kind of like blew up as a genre, was in the context of the financial crisis and me growing up being a teenager, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or like a pre listening to Skrillex, and it was like the most revelatory experience of my life.
Going back on your youth during the 2008, the sample question that I provided, how did you hear and make you interested in your quote unquote profession with music making? You stated that you lived in a rural Utah separated from urbanization and yeah.
Let me tell you a bit about my life. I grew up in San Francisco, and I had like a relatively troubled childhood because I'm neurodivergent and I always acted out. And my parents always hated it, and it was just kind of shitty and traumatic for me. And then when I was a teenager, like I got really into dubstep and stuff, but I also had really bad depression, so my parents sent me away to a treatment center in Utah, like a long-term therapeutic boarding school in Utah for 2 years, and then I went to just a regular boarding school in Utah after that for 2 years. It was really hard because it was like me being closeted with fans in fucking Utah,
Yeah.
and it sucked. But I, I was since I heard a lot about the rave scene, but I was in like the least ravey part of America. It was just like it was just like I had to like almost imagine and create what like I imagined the experience of that would look like channeling that into music.
Yeah. So are you feel like you've gotten better since then, or do you still feel like you're, experimenting with your life a bit?
I said both in a way. I still, I've gotten a lot better with all the ups and downs, but I'm still trying to figure out how my life is going to be. It's always a gradual process. There is no answer. There's just constantly asking questions to get from point A to point B, but there's no like final answer.
Yeah. So, going back on your music, I guess, do you feel like you would, if you had to choose one topic, would you rather make more dubstep music or, you know, signal wave, vaporwave music?
I don't make dubstep music. I make more like deconstructed club and psycore, which is like psychedelic trance, but darker and faster and
Yeah.
more experimental, almost at speedcore tempos sometimes. And I have like a three-part album series. Part one and two is already out. It's called Oh Great Epiphany. It's out on Vivarium Records. It is dark ambient, experimental deconstructed club and psycore all in one thing with some vaporwave influences in the sample chopping as well. I wouldn't consider myself a vaporwave artist, but I do think it's vaporwave in the sense, not in the sense of like the '80s aesthetic, but it's vaporwave out of the 2000 recession, 2010s
Yeah.
mainstream EDM aesthetic, like Electric Daisy Carnival, like Porter Robinson, stuff like that, like Skrillex, Diplo, Tiesto in the 2010s, that kind of vibe. And making vaporwave out of that.
Interesting. So you're like playing on the nostalgia, not on the 80s and 90s, but of the early millennia.
Yeah, because that's what I grew up in. I'm not like James Ferraro. I'm not that generation. Although I love James Ferraro, visionary artist, so
Yeah.
visionary.
How do you mess
Yeah,
how do you mess with the music of the time era to make the music that you do now?
do a lot of like chopped and screwed production techniques, like in vaporwave, and I try and slow it down. Sometimes I isolate the vocals from like a cheesy EDM song of the 2000s and slow it down. And what I do is I have these various time stretch samples that create this characteristic dark ambience in all of my music. That kind of sounds like post-apocalyptic landscapes, like sheet metal scraping across each other, and like factories and rumbling and all these like industrial mechanical sounds that are the sounds of the future of the apocalypse when like urbanization collapses, but there's all these factories and stuff still with AI automatically churning out random shit, and
Yeah.
that shit just becomes trash. And a big part of my aesthetic is it's like trash armor almost, and EDM is trash armor, almost like it's trash armor for like the singers of the song, like featured on the EDM songs, and just isolating the vocals usually and just slowing it down and making it sound like they're trapped in this like post-apocalyptic trash armor as memory of the world that no longer exists. That EDM was supposed to be like representative of in terms of like a utopia.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I make. That's like a big part of my music process. I used to do a lot more beat oriented and hyperpop stuff, but I eventually had a period of both mental crisis and creative inspiration that led me towards. I don't remember exactly when it was, but at a certain point, I started gravitating towards more ambient sounds and less danceable beat oriented stuff, more like sprawling epics. Because a lot of my tracks are like 10, 12 minute long, like dark ambient rape epics
Hell
with
yeah.
those EDM samples.
What well, I mean, you already said like all right. What software do you use primarily and plugins?
I use Ableton and Vital. I used to use Serum a lot too, but I haven't been able to download it on my new computer and having issues with that. But I use Ableton and I use specifically the time stretching functions like the Ableton warp modes. Ableton warp modes are your best friend if you're trying to do cool sound design. Pro tip for all producers out there. And I just put that through a bunch of like delays, reverbs, granular delays, and that comes up with my signature sound of like this granular, trippy, dark ambient sound in Ableton. And I've used Ableton since I was like 16, and it's like my I use Ableton as an instrument in itself. It's like how dub producers in the 70s used the studio as an instrument. I try and use Ableton as an instrument in itself.
Interesting.
And I try to make my music production very non-linear. So it's like events so like repeats itself in non-linear ways to confuse the user sense of time, you know?
Yeah. You also do visuals too?
Yep, I just started doing that actually, and that's right now is my job is helping a few people out, a few clients out with their social media, video editing using CapCut, stuff like that to create videos for the promo for their social media. In the process, I've also learned how to like make like cool like visualizers and music videos using my software CapCut. It's a pretty basic software. It's not as crazy as like Final Cut Pro or something like that. It's what I could afford right now, so
Yeah.
I'm basically using that to create my own movies and visual art. And I plan to have video art with my music and the visuals exhibited in the galleries in LA pretty soon. I'm working on that, so we'll see if the open calls actually accept it.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, I'm a super artsy girl. I love my like art. I always grew up being into like surrealism, Salvador Dali, stuff like that. I always went to like the MoMA when I was a kid in San Francisco, and
Yeah.
I freaking love art. I love art and science. I just like museums. They're very nice.
Do you
Just
get
wander around.
do you get a lot of inspiration for your art and music that you make from physical things like museums like you said?
I mean, sometimes, I mean, museums. I think there's a lot. There's a place called the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco where it's like it's very futuristic, very post-apocalyptic, like, but it's like an oasis in the apocalypse where it just preserves all the nature and stuff in these two giant bubbles. One is the planetarium, the other is like a jungle exhibit that perfectly simulates the Amazon rainforest and the climate of that in this giant bubble dome thingy. And it's like has all the animals of the Amazon rainforest in it, like an Amazonian zoo, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
crazy.
Oh wow.
And it's like this little bubble that encapsulates that. So like when all their Amazonian rainforests are like devastated and shit, they'll still have this little bubble thousands of miles up north in San Francisco, away from Brazil. They'll just have like a perfect simulation of it, and that's like the inspiration on and music is like almost the preservation of nature and what is good, and like stuff like that in the middle of like the apocalypse. And that museum in particular had a big influence on how I would approach that. So yeah.
I definitely gotta check out more physical things because even though I have like a huge vinyl collection, I need like motivation behind what the music I'm making in order to communicate what I truly want from it.
I feel that I'm not super physical in a lot of ways. I don't necessarily value that as much. My whole philosophy behind life is kind of anti-materialism because of my fixation on ecological collapse and the spiritual downfall that results from it. A lot of people are going to end up super hopeless because of their over-reliance on material things.
Yeah.
And that makes me really sad, but it's like the best thing to do is to not buy into that whole rat race, keeping up with the Joneses kind of bad.
Is nature one of your big inspirations? Just a random question.
No, absolutely, 100%. Nature is, I love nature. That's why I make my music, because that's a mourning, that's grieving for the process of nature's devastation.
Yeah.
But it's also just like the natural forms in nature are inherently spiritual. Like what I was saying about the spiral earlier, that pops up everywhere in nature. You look like a nautilus shell, or like a whirlpool, or like a fern, or certain types of like. There's a type of broccoli where it has like trippy. It looks like a DMT trip. It's like Romanesco broccoli, and it has these like spiraling patterns. And if you phyllotaxis, where if you look at a pine cone or like a flower, you can use the Fibonacci sequence to it perfectly maps on to some of the flowers pine cones in terms of like counting the amount of like petals or stuff like that. And it's like the Fibonacci sequence and the spirals are everywhere in nature. And since the spiral is my interpretation of what a higher power or like God it looks like, nature is inherently spiritual because there's just so many patterns and so much diversity in it.
Yeah.
I think we humans think we're artificial, but artificiality doesn't exist. It's like everything is part of nature, even the AI and stuff like that is all part of nature, just more distant. I don't, it's like thinking things are artificial versus nature. That binary is just an art is the only thing that's artificial. Everything is part of nature,
Yeah.
and it's like nature is cannibalizing itself because of humanity.
So, Sure. Oh, frick. God, I lost my train of thought. Oh, whatever. Do you have any, do you have any upcoming projects that you'd like to share out?
Yes, I do. I have an album coming out on Vivarium Records, which is part three of the series "Oh Great Epiphany," which goes into my relationship with Christianity. I would identify somewhat as a Christian, but in a very esoteric New Age way that a lot of people would consider like really out there or heretical or that field. But I still consider myself a Christian in a lot of ways in terms of Christ as a role model for that. And this last album is like Christian psychcore. So it's like these really fast psychedelic soundscapes in
Ooh.
both the anti-humanist themes and kind of being like humans are unkind in nature. We do not deserve the world that we have, and that's kind of a thing. And our inability to live in harmony with the rest of the human. And like elevate like human beings above other species that are just intelligent. Like if you look at ants or crows or like any sort of like any sort of mammal, like a lot of the animals that we kill and eat are really incompetent and like just as much as intelligent as us. I'm almost a vegetarian. I eat chickens because chickens are kind of bastards, so I don't feel bad about eating them. They'll cannibalize each other. They don't give a fuck. They'll peck out their own eyes and shit. Yeah, I'm a vegetarian, except for chickens. So those chickens kind of suck.
You had like 8 Discord notifications going off while saying all that.
Yeah, no, I forgot to mute a lot of the servers. I don't even know which ones it's going for, what it is. So like join servers and lurk in them, and then like never go like post or look at them at all, but they'll still send notifications.
If you had to choose yourself in like an active community in which you actively are active in? I just said active like 5 times. Which one would you consider yourself to be in?
In terms of like music scenes or communities or just in
Eh,
general.
being active in general, like talking or contributing.
Definitely the LGBTQ community in LA, especially when it intersects with like the underground rave scene. So it's like the Venn diagram of like underground raves in LA and like certain like aspects of trans and like furry culture overlapping and into raves. And I play a lot of those events, or some of them I'm trying to play more
Yeah.
is like a DJ, and that's like a big part of my sense of community as well.
Have you ever
But
done any?
they've
Oh,
always been in the rave scene.
have you ever done any live performances with your own style per se?
So back when my style was more dance music oriented, yes. I haven't done any live performances with my new style. That is actually my old style that I started with, where it's like deconstructed, noisy, vaporwave ambient. I haven't done any performances like that, but I'm planning to do one in I believe June. One of my friends has a show coming up, and they booked me for like an opening act. So
Ooh,
I'm probably going to do my avant-garde stuff there, since it's not really a rave. It's more like a rock concert, DIY kind of punk show, I believe. So I don't have to like play like happy hardcore or like gabber or some genres like that, which I really love, but they're not like the kind of music that I make.
hmm. Is there anything else you want to say, like personally, anything on the podcast episode? That, like, it can be over anything. If you want to
Yeah,
talk.
no, I think I want to talk a lot about my influences in terms of the artists that inspired me, because I think that's really important to like almost like account for that. I'm a big do you know Blade, like Drain Gang?
Do what?
Do you know Drain Gang?
I think so.
Yeah, Blade, he's like this famous underground Swedish rapper. He raps in English, and he has a lot of spiritual and esoteric themes, and a lot of talk. He raps a lot about spirituality and depression and mental health stuff. And he's just a really talented rapper from Sweden. And Blade, he's the leader of the collective called Drain Gang, which is like Blade and two other rappers, Echo 2K and Tyboy Digital, and like producers Young Sherman, White Armor. If you're a certain person out there on the internet, you already know, Drain Gang, But they're my biggest influence as far as like spirituality intersecting with music goes, even though my music sounds totally different from them. It's their themes, and they go very deep into like the themes of their music. And this it seems really pure. It's really purifying for my soul to listen to that music. It's like meditative, sacred music. It's like listening to like a Gregorian chant or something like that. With some of their like more deeper meaning songs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a brainer for life.
Hell yeah.
And I think another one of my influences with music would have to be like I don't remember how to pronounce her. It's like Chukimame Kondori or Elysia Crampton. She's Elysia Crampton. She's like she invented this genre called epic collage, which is kind of like sound collage with all these noise and industrial sounds mixed with pop music and mashups and sampling. And it's just this really cool like interpretation of the detritus world of music and resampling that you create like these epic like collages essentially.
Yeah. I
And
think
her
I know
music
who
is
you're talking about
based off
too.
of that. Her music is based off of that, and I believe a lot of Andean indigenous music because she's indigenous Bolivian, and so her music, her Aymara Bolivian, and so her music reflects that, and it also reflects like the time spiral because I found this out in the Aymara, the indigenous people, their language. Time, if you go their directions for time are like reversed. So if you go to the future, you're going backwards, but if you're going to the past, you're moving forwards. And it's like this weird linguistic quirk of their language in how they position time that is completely the opposite of how most other languages do it.
Oh
And
wow.
that is my theory of the time spiral. Because again, time, even though most people think it just goes forwards, it also goes backwards as well. That's why we have like stuff like deja vu and stuff. That's because there's always this backwards supernatural current of time
Yeah.
coexisting with the regular flow of time. And it forms like a double helix. That's why the spiral is so important. Time forms a double helix. I know that sounds like some crazy shit, but it's if you look into the patterns of it, you can see for yourself. You know?
No, I've heard that saying before, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, it's just like a lot of my music has a lot interesting relationship to time, like the futuristic, apocalyptic stuff, as well as like the idyllic, utopian aspects of stuff. And again, in that little bubble. And my music is all about spiritually preparing for that and spiritual creating a spiritual oasis of trash armor in the post-apocalyptic wastelands to try and survive and like contain the good and the pure in the world as the world works.
Yeah. Well, before we go on to the mix that you provided for this episode, is there any last things that you want to talk about before, you know, you showcase what you have?
Nope, I think we're ready.
Any shout outs, any things you want to say to people, any more
Yeah,
influences?
shout out Freshwater Media, shout out Barbarian Records. Without them, I would not be on this podcast. So thank y'all so much. It means a lot. Also, check out my new album on Freshwater Media, Demilitarized Zones. It just came out. It's gotten a really good reception already, but I'd love for you to check it out. I'll put the link in. I'll send you the link to put it in the bio.
Got you.
But yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you for joining me.
Of course.
There is no time to rest, to be a body of play in the water with the other girls. Rest of time knowing and unknowing, hating self, looking in mirrors with 1,000-yard stare, always on high alert. There is no time to rest, to be a body at play in the water with the other girls. Rest of time knowing and unknowing, hating self, looking in mirrors with 1,000-yard stare, always on high alert.
swag go hard, everything I do hard. Catch your boy, put him on option, soldier boy. 30 swag, I'm the dark horse. Baby girl got an ashy juice. 808 smack out your brain, you lose. You try to compete with, boy, you lose. I ball like pound, cool. You ain't got no prime, you ain't got no prime. You don't wanna pick up your phone, that scam, lightly. 30 don't give a damn, high key. I made hits, not low key, high key. I'ma turn my soul to Easter pink. Base like pussy, Easter pink. Medium red like a fucking steak. Give a swag, meet that swag mignon. First class flights, that's what we on. VIP, backstage, how you get there? All I can say is my swag took me there. I wanna go there, but I wanna go there. Daddy said want it that way. Backstreet Boys, I want it that way. So I make content more than rap. On a press run question, they been asking. Not the same things, I ain't no lavish, but I'm modern day walking lavish. I'm having fun, that's why you like my swag. You ain't never gonna see no ink on my skin, I'm never getting tatty. 30 swag, gotta keep it model by. I was down bad, I ain't had nobody. To the gunsmith, now I got straight mind. I'm a hacker, how I get these mine. Niggas try to sense and take my power, got my eyes out, I can still see. Y'all niggas been fake and I been real, even the blind can see. 30 swag from the world swag, I only drop once on everybody that swag feed.
So nobody would believe anything I have to say about anything. And then drive me there if they could. I suffered so bad. I was really struggling to survive.
But you're okay now.
I'm okay. I'm okay. God is going to be there. All the angels and everything. And, you know, whatever's on the beyond, I think it's going to be more like Star Trek, beaming me up into a space vehicle, man. Then I move on, recolonize to another planet or whatever. But it's whatever's the beyond. I know it's going to be good because I didn't do anything as wrong as they said. I did the right thing. And I saved a lot of people's butts from getting hurt and raped and killed too.
I know I repulse you, terrify you. You see me as a monster. Yet, you did this to me. And before the night is over, I'm gonna prove to you, word by word, that you're all monsters. Exactly like me.
thinking what I done, and now I'm thinking about my mother. Who never thought I'd come quite.
I am the High One, the Lord of Ecstasy, the enemy of the wolf. I am eternal.
And with the traffic conditions from the end of the show.
So you're thinking does the people more rushed at the annual electric carnival, fully drunk, and 120 have you run your hospital, also regularly probable tonight. A 15-year-old girl has died of a second drug overdose.
It's tragic, shocking event, but something that happened. If you have to say that we have to do all the way
Hospital didn't go down the other time. The 15-year-old girl came in and the birth.
Scratch my head, sweet Annie Rich, and welcome me back to town. Come out on your porch, step into your parlor, I'll tell you how it all went down. Out with the truckers and the pickers and the cowboy angels, in a good saloon, every single town. I remember something you once told me, and I'd be damned if it did not come true.
I'm here where endless meets the end. Do you see me? I'm hidden here again. Your whispers found its way, calling me to stay. I'm standing at the edge, but something always brings me back. All the voices in my head reminding me of what I have. If I fall tonight, you can bring me back to life. If I fall tonight,
shine bright like a diamond. Shine bright like a diamond. Fine light in the beautiful sea. I choose to be happy. You and I, we're like diamonds in the sky. You're a shooting star, I see, a vision of ecstasy. When you hold me, I'm alive. We're like diamonds in the sky. I knew that we'd become one right away. Oh, right away. At first sight, I felt energy of serenity. I saw the light inside shine bright. Tonight, you and I were beautiful like diamonds in the sky. I too am so alive. We're beautiful like diamonds in the sky. Shine bright like a diamond. Shine bright like a diamond. Shining bright like a diamond. We're beautiful.